Hello, so I am here to talk about books, as you probably guessed. It is my March wrap-up, approximately halfway through April. Better late than never. That seems to be my attitude to life. I have my Goodreads over here on my laptop, which if I'm glancing down there, that's why, because I'm also trying to make sure it doesn't go to sleep, because that is apparently a feature I've not turned off still. And I have my pile of books. I had a weird month. I usually read YA romance. I've kind of grown out of YA in the last year or so. I read a few books in January. I started off strong because my goal is 52 books, so like a book a week. Started strong in January, read a few books, was on track, didn't read for the whole of February. So went terribly. And then I got stressed with uni, stressed with, what's going on. And then in March, I was like, okay, right, so I'm going to ease myself back in. So I started on graphic novels and some poetry. So I went through my bookcase, or my kind of miniature bookcase that I had at university, and looked at some of the things that I hadn't read yet. And then I also went to Waterstones and picked up a couple of books that I really wanted to read that I'd heard about. And I also at Christmas got a book. So that was the book I started with, and that book was Teen Titans Raven. So this was my first graphic novel that I've ever read by Cami Garcia, and yeah, I gave it 4 stars. I didn't give it 5 because I just didn't feel like there was enough depth to the characters and the plot, and the end felt quite rushed. But I have to say, it is a gorgeous book. It's mainly in black, grey and purple because Raven's colour is purple, and it's definitely made me want to read the other Teen Titans book. I think there's at least one more of these so far. I'm not sure who it's by. I don't think it's by the same author. But the reason I picked this up, or asked my mum to pick it up for me for Christmas, was because the illustrator for it is Gabriel Piccolo, and I follow him on Instagram, on my art Instagram, and I absolutely love him. And so that's what influenced me to pick it up. And I don't know why it took me so long to read this. It took me about 3 months. But honestly, it's not the longest thing on my bookshelf so that I have not read. So I was quite happy that I read that. As I said, it's a nice light read. It's not that in-depth. But yeah, I would recommend it. I think the next book I read was Sabrina Benheim's Depression and Other Magic Tricks. So Sabrina is a button poet, which button poetry YouTube, if you want to look it up. There's quite a few of her performances on there. And I gave this book a 3 stars, and not because I didn't like the poetry. I really liked a lot of the poems in here, but I much preferred watching her perform it. And I actually think it's more like a 3.5, because I think a 3 is a bit harsh, but a lot of why I ended up giving it a 3 is because I found the formatting of a lot of them quite distracting. 2 dogs are having a barking fight outside my house. It's like these ones where it was big chunks of paragraphs and like big text, and I don't know, just for poems, and then it would like do things like this, and I just don't like this sort of thing. The ones that weren't like that I really enjoyed, and they didn't distract me in the same way that those ones did. So I would still recommend reading it, or looking up some of her poems on button poetry. To be honest, I'd probably recommend that, and watching her perform. And then if you like them, then check out her book as well. So the next thing I read was Life of the Party by Olivia Gatwood. She is another button poet. I think this was published not with button poetry though. I think it was published with Doubleday, which I think is in like a part of Penguin Random House. I love this cover. I'm obsessed with neon. And not to judge a book by its cover, but like I would judge this one by its cover, and if I had, I would be right, because I gave this one 5 stars. It did have a couple of like long, what I was complaining about, like paragraphy things like here, but I didn't find it anywhere near as distracting as the other one. I think this is a really interesting read. I would definitely look her up on button poetry, watch her perform. She's got some really good poems. One in particular is My Grandmother Asked Why I Don't Trust Men, which is on page 55 of this book. It's the first one of part 2, and I won't go into the gory details of it, but there's a bit where it says, please don't go looking for a guilty woman in it. And basically a lot of this book is about her fascination with true crime and how that kind of stems from, or has resulted in, a fear of those things happening to her, and how violence against women is so prominent in our culture and our society. So I'll read the blurb. There we go. I don't know why I'm doing this, playing show and tell with the times I've walked fast in the dark. Maybe I see myself in the worst of it. Maybe if I can imagine myself in the shallow water, you should too. Maybe I'm tired of hearing people talk about the murder of girls like it is both beautiful and out of the ordinary. And then it says underneath, a thrilling feminist voice for the 21st century. It's a good book. It is a bit, if you're a bit faint of heart, I wouldn't recommend it. I can't remember what order I read these in. Well, I mean, I obviously read them as 1, 2 and 3. What I do remember is I bought number 1, and I actually think I read this before the poems, because I went to Waterstones, I bought this, I picked up the Olivia Gatwood, and I didn't buy the other 2 because I was like, well, what if I don't like it? I don't want to have 3 of them. I picked up the first one and I loved it, and I instantly regretted not picking up the other 2. So 2 days later, I went back to Waterstones and bought the other 2. I was like walking around, I was like, do you know where volume 2 for Heartstopper is? And she was like, it's right there, like on the young adult bit, where I'd walked past about 4 times and she'd definitely seen me. I felt really embarrassed. This is just a lovely, cute story. I think you can read it for free online. I've read some of the newer ones, and then it later on gets published into volumes. I would recommend having them as physical because I just like physical books, but also if you don't want to buy physical books and for whatever reason, read it online. It's on there. These are gorgeous, gorgeous covers. They're very cute. At the end of this one, I was very like, because as I said, I bought this one and then it was like 2 days later I got the other 2, and I was like, I need to know what happens. And then yeah, I kind of just assumed, because I didn't know it was online or anything, I assumed that these were like a complete story but it's ongoing. So I got to the end of 3 and I was like, someone help me, I need to read more. But yeah, I love her artwork, I love the story. I think it's very cute. It's a really nice and I think realistic kind of portrayal of sexuality and being a teenager. You can tell that she is close to a teenager or was a teenager. And I don't know, I feel like a lot of the time you read teen fiction or young adults and it's really hard to speak like a teenager, I think, in those kind of books. Like it doesn't sound natural in the same way that it would if you were having like a conversation with your friends. But this one I think pulls it off well. And yeah, as I was saying, gorgeous. And then in volume 2 and 3 it's also got mini comics on some of their friends. So Tara and Darcy are a lesbian couple, well, like 2 women, I'm not sure, I think one of them's bisexual and one of them's a lesbian. And then Teo and Elle is about a trans girl called Elle and Teo, who is a boy and a cisgender boy. And they're both Charlie's friend, I think. It's been a little while, my brain's gone. But yeah, they're nice little extra short stories and they're cute. And you kind of see little bits, so the way they come about is you see a bit about Tara and Darcy being a couple in Heartstopper, and then in the second one they include a little story, I think, about their origin. And then with Teo and Elle, they are not a couple, and then you kind of see what happens when they become a couple. So I like that. It was very good. Another one on the graphic novel front was Pumpkinheads by Rainbow Rowell and Faith Erin Hicks. I've read some Rainbow Rowell before when I was younger. I've read Fangirl and Eleanor and Park. I can't tell you how I remember that being. Oh, I forgot to say the other 3 books I rated 5 stars. I rated this 4 stars if I remember correctly. Gorgeous book, absolutely. It's full colour, but it's like, it reminds me of a really aesthetic Instagram feed because it's like got that kind of like orange theme on going through it. Gorgeous, love it. I gave it 4 because it's quite predictable. It's sweet, but yeah, it's quite predictable. And I found a couple of things mildly annoying. For instance, there's this whole thing where they're like, they're the best of friends when they work at the pumpkin patch. So every autumn all through high school they've worked together at the best pumpkin patch in the whole wide world. They say goodbye every Halloween and they're reunited every September 1st. And it's like, it's really implied that they're really good friends, but then they're like, oh yeah, we don't message each other outside of this job ever. And I just find that a bit baffling. So I don't know, I gave it 4 because it was, as I said, a bit predictable, and also that detail kind of annoyed me a bit, but still recommend it. It's quite a heavy book, but it's really pretty, and I've had a nice like introduction to graphic novels. The next book I read was The Flat Share. So this is about Leon and Tiffy. They share a flat, but not in the traditional way you would think. So he works night shifts, she works in the day, like traditional 9 to 5. So they share a flat, but at the times the other one's not there. And it's just, I really enjoyed this one. I think I gave it 5 stars. I think, did I read this? Well, Heartstopper was my first 5 stars. And this is like my first 5-star like novel, I would say, of the year. So there's Tiffy, and it's about her breaking up with her boyfriend and getting over that relationship, and this is how she ends up in this situation where she's living with Leon. And then there's Leon and his relationship, and you learn about their personal lives and their families. And I just think it's a really sweet book, and I liked that Tiffy had these friends that you get to know as well alongside the other characters. And I'm gonna order Beth O'Leary's next book, which I think is called The Switch, and yeah, I'm really excited to read that because I think this is her debut novel, possibly. Could be wrong. I had to keep stopping because I have 4 rabbits, and I don't know if anyone's ever been around rabbits, but they are noisy and they like to make a mess, and they also just seem to know when I'm either sleeping or trying to do something that needs them to be quiet, and then every other time they just lay asleep. But yeah, I definitely recommend this one. It's such a sweet read, and if you like romance, read it. It's my like foray into, I think, adult fiction. I've done young adult. I kind of felt like I needed something a bit older. I went into new adult, so it's a little bit graphic for my liking most of the time, and I found that the ones I've read, I would find a couple of them enjoyable. I'd read but from the same author, and they'd be very formulaic, and I could just predict everything that was going to happen. So I guess this is my first romance in adult genre, and I really loved it, and I would definitely recommend it. It's a very sweet and funny tale, and I like the characters. I found Tiffy a little bit annoying at first because she was very much like quirky girl, kind of remind me of like Zoe Deschanel and New Girl kind of thing. When I watched that, I might be wrong, but that's how I remember her in that program. But later on, I really grew to like her, and I liked Leon, and you could kind of understand their backgrounds and what they had in common and how they bonded and stuff like that. I just thought it was nice, and it was quite a slow moving romance. The last book I read in March was If I Ever Met You, and it's about a fomance. So Laurie and Jamie had their perfect office romance. They set the rules via email. Everyone can see their head over heels. They stage their photos. This must be true love. They're faking it. I really loved this book. This was a 5-star for me. I've got a lot of 5 stars. My average Goodreads rating's like a 3, but apparently I've upped my game. I don't know if I'm just being let down by a lot of the books that I've been reading, and so everything in comparison seems good. But Mary McFarlane, this is my second Mary McFarlane book. I've just finished my 3rd now in April. Loved it. I loved the first one I read. I loved this one. In both this and Flat Share, there's kind of touching on the topic of like gaslighting, and what I really liked about this book is that it touches on some of the issues of her being a career woman, or maybe not necessarily a career woman, but she wasn't like overly focused on having children younger, and so her husband breaks up with her. That's not a spoiler, it says it on the blurb. And so she's 36 or something. Yeah, partner of 18 years. They got together, I think, first year of university. And it deals with her kind of considering what this means for her future, because she wanted children and wants to get married. And, well, she wasn't sure she wanted children, but she thought she probably would want children. And she kind of felt like by him doing this to her at that point in her life, he'd taken that opportunity away from her. And it touches on race, because Laurie is a black woman, or she's mixed race. I can't remember. There's a bit where she like goes to a salon and she talks about how like most salons don't know how to do her hair and she has to go to a special one when she goes home. And she talks about like I don't know, like some of the insecurities she has, and also about the race things she faces in casual like racism, like, oh, but where are you really from kind of comments. And I think it was really nicely integrated into how it would be in real life, like how I experience things. It's very much in a casually, not like really obviously racist kind of thing, but it's like definitely her everyday experience. And then Jamie, who has a lot of assumptions made about him because he's confident and he's young. He's not young, but he comes up, it's implied that he seems younger than he is, like he looks younger than he is, and so people think he's younger, and he is young for the industry they're in. But it's, yeah, it's implied that people don't like him pretty much because he's confident and good at his job, and he's kind of penalised for not being a team player. And then Laurie is kind of used to not being gossiped about in their office because she's like the one in a boring, steady relationship. And then obviously that turns on its head and she works with her partner, and that's how it leads to this romance between her and Jamie. And I think it's very interesting. The ending was a bit, actually, I think I say I gave this 5 stars. I gave it 5 stars up until near the end. I think I gave it 4 at that point. I think I would say it's 4.5 because the end I wasn't a huge fan of. It was kind of like a bit too over the top film like. I don't want to spoil it, but I was just kind of like, it's a bit dramatic. Like, it wasn't like unimaginable or anything, but I was just like, it just didn't feel like that necessary the way that ended. I didn't think anyway. So yeah, I would definitely recommend though. And I've also read You Had Me at Hello by Mary McFarlane, and I would recommend that as well. So, and then hopefully soon I will do a TBR for April, because I've just decided that I want to do the Owls readathon, even though it is, as I'm filming this, the 12th of April. So who knows if I'm going to catch up with that, but I've got a couple of books I wanted to read anyway that fit in well that I have not started yet. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you check out some of these books, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.